I now would like to call on Nadja Salson. She's the Policy Officer with the European Public Services Union, EPSU, and the CPSU is a member of EPSU. Nadja has been invited to speak here today to identify the priorities of trade union solidarity across Europe. Nadja, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, dear President, dear Congress delegates, and dear Owen. It is indeed extremely humbling, and it is a great pleasure to be here, and I should say to be back in Galway, which is a very, very nice city with a very... And I was here last year, and I thought the conference was also extremely moving and with very eloquent speakers, and I'm very happy to be back. EPSU, and I'll be brief, don't worry. EPSU represents 8 million members across Europe, and a large majority of whom, 67%, are actually women who work in government, central, local, regional government, health and social services, and utilities. Today, trade union solidarity, and that's where Derek's speech ended, trade union solidarity, cooperation, coordination at all levels, local, national, European, and international, is more than necessary. Europe has been facing an unprecedented social and economic crisis, and public sector workers have borne the brunt of a financial crisis that they did not cause. Our priority has been and still is to oppose those EU-coordinated budget cuts, which have been imposed in most cases in a large majority of member states, including, of course, Ireland. Recruitment freeze, dismissals, cuts in wages, in social fare, pensions, in employment benefits. That's what the austerity agenda has been, again, in a majority of member states across the European Union. So I want to be extremely clear here. Those cuts have led to misery. There are now 25 million unemployed in the European Union, 10 million more unemployed than in 2008. There are more inequalities, more poverty, and economically speaking, well, we have low growth, we have a threat of deflation, weak demand, and the public debt is certainly not reducing. In Greece, there are 1 million people who have no access to healthcare following spending cuts. This has resulted in an increase in infant mortality, in AIDS and suicide. Ireland is a special case. You've had more than your share of hardship. Yet Ireland, you'll be pleased to know, in Brussels, in the EU institution, is hailed as a model. Well, true, Ireland has come out of the IMF EU, so-called Troika bailout, and regaining some degree of independence, and I say slantie to Ireland for that. But slantie, yeah, I'll get the pronunciation right by the end of Congress, or tonight. But a large share of the financial rescue, as you know, went to the banks. It didn't go to the people. Unemployment in Ireland, yes, has been contained, but it has a lot to do with the fact that 300,000 young people left the country. The EU banking crisis has today cost much more to every Irish individual than any other EU citizens, and that includes indeed German people. So if in Germany you can have a pay increase, yes, indeed, there is no reason why Ireland shouldn't have also a pay increase. Yet, multinationals in Ireland make much more profits than in the rest of the EU. What we are saying here is that it's not fair. Prosperity for the few and austerity for the majority is not what we want. It is not what we argue for. We argue for alternatives to cuts through, well, like CPSU does, through campaigning the EU institutions for us, and social dialogue. And we've been supporting, through Solidarity, affiliates going on strike, and there have been quite a few across Europe for the past 5 years, and coming up soon again in Greece. In June, we will discuss with the employers in central government how we can repair the damage done to social dialogue and indeed to collective bargaining in central government. We hope that your minister, Minister Hollin, will join in those discussions. For EPSU, information, consultation, and collective bargaining rights, as well as equal pay between women and men, are central to modern public services. Now, what do we ask the EU in terms of economics? Clearly, the new EU economic governance must shift its focus towards income. From spending, there is this obsession with public spending. The focus must shift to income, to investment in public services. Clearly, for this, we need money. Now, this is why we call for a Robin Hood tax, a tax on financial transactions. We indeed call for fairer and more progressive tax systems and for a much more serious battle against wealthy tax dodgers and for the end of tax havens. Now, this requires more resources also in public tax administrations, yet governments are doing the opposite by doing cuts also in tax services. Now, we've had a couple of results. We have now an EU draft proposal, legislative proposal, for a tax on financial transactions. This is supported by 11 governments. Sadly, the Irish government is not supporting it yet. This tax will contribute to curb financial speculation, which again has been the cause of the crisis, and raise billions of euros, which should be spent on the common good, on the general interest. A couple of weeks ago, the EU governments agreed to lift partly bank secrecy, which is, as we know, the best friend of wealthy tax dodgers. As part of our campaign against privatization and indeed against outsourcing, which we know in Europe has been more costly to taxpayers, we had a successful European citizens initiative to keep water public, to have water as a human right. Now, this petition has been signed by 1.9 million European citizens. This is putting much pressure on the European Commission, or indeed the future European Commission, to legislate to keep water as a human right and in public hands. Now, clearly there is much more remains to be done. We have our Congress next May, and that's where we will define the next lines of actions. Now, ahead of the European elections, the ETUC, the European Trade Union Confederation, held last Friday a European demonstration with 50,000 delegates from 20 European countries. We took to the street of Brussels, where the EU institutions are headquartered, to say that the future of Europe lies with social welfare, with quality jobs and wealth distribution, not speculation and greed. I wish you a very successful Congress, laying the ground for the work in the year ahead, in the interest of your members, for another Europe. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Thank you, Nadja. Okay.
Kieran O'Connor, Chairperson, National Committee for Global Solidarity. I'd like to welcome Nadja here, and I just want to reiterate something that she said. And that is, all the pain we've gone through, all this austerity, has been designed to pay off the bankers, who basically doubled the money supply, then cut it off. And every time they've done this, since 1919, it is the workers that have paid. So it's doubly important that we fight for our corner and our pay restoration and the right to have decent work for decent pay and social justice. So thank you once again, Nadja, for coming, and it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Carl.